Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Bricks King podcast, where I'm going to bend your ear about Lego, review those amazing bricks of plastic, and discuss what is new and up-and-coming around the Lego world. I'm your Minifigure Matt. Let's build on it. Welcome in, everybody. How are we doing today? Another lovely episode, and I am glad you are here. Hopefully you're here. If you're here, if you're listening, you're here, of course. Anyway, today we are talking about Lego Masters Season 3, Episode 4 recap. And it is a gorgeous little episode with these beautiful little trees. I say little, they're actually not that little. So hope everybody is doing well. Strap in, this is going to be a fun one. So this challenge was supposed to air last week, but because of baseball, it was interrupted because, baseball takes precedence on Fox. However, we finally got a chance to see Ethan and Dom. And the challenge was, you have these trees. They're almost like little bonsai trees. You have these trees that are growing, and you have to build things without studs. Every challenge that they have had so far, they've attached to bases or something like that. Completely free floating, if you will. So Ethan and Dom, this was their first challenge as they had come onto the show. I absolutely loved their build. Their brick built characters were absolutely gorgeous in the way that they were done. So cool. I love when people scale up brick built characters like that. Push the minifigs aside. I know a lot of the challenges have minifigs, but when people really nail these kind of characters, it pulls everything into the build. It's so perfect. And the great thing was each of them had their own little vignettes, which I thought was pretty awesome in its own right. But it was really neat that they connected, all of their individual segments, these different little pods, if you will, with a ladder. But, it was so, I hate to use the word magical, but it was pretty much magical. The only thing that I thought, I was like, well, is there too much space in the middle of the tree? It ended up, being fine. Judges didn't mention it. If I had to find something, maybe that would be the only thing, but I was blown away by just so many different little details and fun stuff that was involved in their build. I really liked it a lot. I'm not trying to be a homer here after talking with Ethan and Colleen, but not at all, but it was just a really good build. So Emily and Liam are up next. They're the mother-son, by the way. They did Panda Playtime, which who doesn't love pandas to begin with? The pandas looked absolutely beautiful. Beautiful is probably not the right word. I just was kind of like, oh my God, I just sort of I literally, that's what happened. And oh my God, I want to build one of these things so bad. They look so awesome. I want my own little brick built panda, but I want that one. I don't want mine. I want that one. But it turned out really nice. They had a mother panda as well that was sleeping in the main panda house, if you will. And the little detail that they added to her sleeping with the little yellow Z's, that denote her sleeping just out cold. I thought that was awesome. It just, I think Amy had mentioned something about it. I can't remember. It was one of the two, but I think it was Amy had even brought up about it. And I was like, oh my God. It's little details like that can get you to the next round and can get you, to the final challenge. I mean, it's things like that somebody like myself, I would not have thought of. Oh, hey, let's do brick built Z's as well. And it's not something hard. It wasn't something hard, something super difficult to do, but they accomplished it and they just add to it. Nick and Stacy, they did the Lego brick, which I thought was absolutely great to put in this challenge. I'm sure, as a judge, you've got to be looking at that and saying, hey, yeah. I mean, can you really eliminate somebody that's using the Lego brick in that scale? They're all using the Lego brick, but you know what I mean. Again, another person, another group that did the brick built characters, and they work so well. They're hanging around all over the place and stuff like that. They're all over the spot, and I love the idea of their cardboard monster. I did not recognize what it was at first. They'd mentioned it, and I was like, oh my God, I know what you're talking about. Everybody has had to fight a cardboard monster at some point in time in their life. If you were a real kid, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, somebody that actually had that imagination, or, I mean, I guess you could always have access to cardboard, Anyway, I don't know. Do kids still do that? I mean, do kids still create cardboard forts and characters that they can play against? I don't know. But if not, they're totally missing out. But their build was incredible. I love the way it was done. And as well, having that secret door at the bottom of the treehouse, which I didn't even realize until Amy brought it up. Oh, I thought that was just the bomb. I love that thing. Liz and Aaron, they did the Girls Rock build. This was essentially a pirate ship with a rock festival that was going on throughout. It was kind of themed into the boat, into the ship at the same time. The sails were absolutely massive in how they expanded upward throughout the build of the tree into the branches and stuff. But I couldn't decipher exactly what they were at a distance until it got closer. I'm like, oh, I see where they're attached. Oh, I see. I think it was just like ropes or chains or something like that they had used. And not so much to secure them into place, just to have that, that connectivity to be like, this is what they are. But they really used a lot of elevation in their tree. Most of these builds did, but it was really nice to see. Something that I noted as well, and then Amy had brought it up, the lack of curves in the ship. There was a lot of chunky, squared off ends and stuff like that with the bricks, especially in the bow of the ship. Didn't really look all that great with all of that, blocky kind of look going on. But as a whole, I thought it was a really neat build. I really love the colors of this, and anything that's colorful is going to stand out. But for me, especially, anything that's colorful really stands out. So Brendan and Greg are up next here. We have the PK Clubhouse. Now, if I'm not mistaken, they are 2 of 8, I believe. And that's what their build is essentially. It's all their siblings and their own little spaces and stuff like that. Their pods, they were so unique. Just little pods that were built all over. There were 8 of them in total, like I had mentioned. And it just reminded me of like the actual Lego treehouse set from 2-3 years ago. I don't think it's been 3 years ago. But that's what it really has reminded me of, just due to the sheer fact of these little pods and stuff. It just had that aesthetic to it. But I really like the way it was done. And each little pod was something unique to each one of the 8 kids, where they had, one could be, I can't remember what all of them are, but I know the one that stuck out was like the workout sister or whatever that they had mentioned. But I really like the way they were done. And I got to ask, did anyone see the brick-built raccoon? It was just a quick little pan. I loved it. I was like, oh my God. I absolutely love that thing. And it wasn't like it was super impressive, amazing. It was just that it was there. And it just captured it that perfectly that I could notice it. The other thing that they have done or did, they had motorized their build as well. Nobody else had motorized anything else. They just got a ton of stuff in this build, and they're going to be competitive as we continue to move along in the show, in the challenge. So John and Xavier are up next here. What do we have? They have Fort Puno. I can't quite get it the way that they said it, but anyway, there's a host of activities for the minifigs that they can take part in on this build. There's D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. There's riding on a mech. Yeah, you can count me in. Duh. Absolutely, you can count me in. If there's a mech in it, I'm on it. Let's roll. Lego needs to make a mech at one of their parks so I can take a picture in it. One day. There was a Lego brick rope ladder in this build as well. I thought that was absolutely brilliant in the way that it was done. Just a little, I think it was 1x2s. It was perfect. Perfect. I love those kind of treehouse ladders where, they have wood and stuff like that, the rope ladders. But just having it like this was just absolutely cool. There's a rock concert that was going on in there. There's the wrestling ring. I thought that was a nice little touch as well. One of the things that the judges mentioned, it just wasn't as colorful. And it wasn't. They seem to be lacking significant amounts of color. A lot of kind of bland, when I say bland, natural earth colors. And it just didn't fit for what they're doing, especially when you're trying to get away from the color, the base color of like the tree, that kind of grayish color, and then the darker green color. You want to do something that really stands out and has some contrast against the tree. But another thing that I had mentioned here in my notes was it just didn't feel as finished out to me. What I mean by that is it felt like it was just kind of a little bit too rough around the edges and stuff like that. It felt like it was missing just some nice little soft details to kind of wrap everything up. Here's an analogy. You spent all your time wrapping this gift with wrapping paper and making sure that the corners are perfect. You got the perfect angles, the tape's in the right spot. And you're like, this is great, except it misses the bow on top. You did everything else, but you forgot the bow. Or you didn't think about using the bow to make it just that extra bit. But hey, Steven and Steven are next here. And Steven and Steven their stuff was really neat. I did like it. I'm going to talk about it here in a moment. But it was called Treehouse University. From a distance, it looked a lot like rounded cakes to me. It really did. I'm not complaining, but now I'm looking at it. I was like, man, I'm hungry. I would like a piece of cake right about now. But very colorful, very, very nicely done. They absolutely had me cracking up with one of their parts of their build because it was a firefighter and his Dalmatian dog giving lessons to cats about how to not get caught and get stuck in trees. I'm tearing up right now. I laughed way too hard at that part of the build. I went back and probably clicked through it, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 times. It was so funny. It was so, because it's so cliche, you see firefighters depicted in comedies and stuff like that. And what? There's always a cat in a tree. Oh, it was just so funny. I really like that. Amy had mentioned, though, that there are so many details that make fun little stories in the build, and she was absolutely right. Absolutely right. But, man, we needed more than 2 seconds to really look at this. There just needed to be more time. And this has been a common theme. I've brought it up time and time again from season 1 the whole way up until, season 3, episode 4 at this point. I just wish we had more opportunity to see these things. I mean, even if they released extra content aside, there was like a video 360 pan of everything. At least you could pause it, zoom in, and go back and look at it because it's just so cool to see some of these builds. Dave and Emily are up next here. I'm probably going to say this wrong, but I'm going to try. Hoggle Candy Treehouse. It is very pretty. It is a really pretty build. I loved the piece of toast on the side of the build on the exterior. I thought that was gorgeous. That was something even before they came up to have the judges look at their build. It was something that I had noticed from a distance, or I should say a distance. When they were going through the build process and stuff, it was something that stuck out to me. Just that quick little pan of it. I loved it. I thought that was so neat. So one of the things I wanted to note, that I noted and bring up to you guys, is that Jamie brought up about their supports being super clever. And what they did is they had their build and stuff, but they used extra bricks and stuff on the corners or in certain spots to be able to match the angle of the upward branches. So the branches sticking out at an angle. And what they did is they put bricks underneath their build at that same angle to get that same angle so that it just rested much more easily. I thought that was beautiful design, a really nice way of doing it. And the fact that Jamie brought it up, Amy looks at things a little bit differently. I think Jamie, he mentions about details, this and that, and we'll talk about that with one of these other builds coming up. But I think a lot of the time he looks at things in a more technical capacity. He's the one that mentions about things being motorized or the Technic frame or a certain technique that was used. He seems to be the one that brings that stuff up more often. But as a whole, I thought this build was really, really unique. It was a fun little build. Austin and Justin did fiction and friction. You could not say that 10 times fast. No way, dude. So here we go again. More brick-built characters. Now, there's only a few in here, but more brick-built characters. I love it. I absolutely love it. I believe it's each of them and what they, their childhood was like and stuff. The brick-built books as well were gorgeous. We've seen these with Harry Potter before in the Harry Potter sets. Absolutely well done. It was another detail to just add to the build. The build was already nice in its own right, but getting the curve edges of the books. And, it makes me wonder, have y'all ever built one of those before? And you just took the idea, the concept that's stored in your brain, and you're like, you know what, we can use this here. Let's upscale it a little bit. But I thought it was really neat that their entire build, it just had details of their childhood, and it was a really nice touch of nostalgia for them, obviously, because the nostalgia isn't mine, but it was really nice to see. Christine and Michelle, they did the Fairy B&B. I really like the colors of this. I thought it was vibrant, very vibrant in comparison to some of the others, but they had their work cut out for them. They had a wrap that went around the base of the tree, where they used plant elements, the different colored greens and stuff like that to kind of wrap around and kind of take away from the bland grayish color of the tree, like I'd mentioned before. And they had some small builds, but they weren't bad. They were pretty decent. The biggest thing is this was, if I'm not mistaken, a 10-hour challenge, and they essentially lost 6 hours. They had 4 hours to build, and it was something that I think Amy and Jamie both had mentioned, about having more time and what they could have done in that 10 hours. It's just, it's hard. It's hard when the pressure is on, And it's really tough. And you saw with Michelle how the pressure just was there, and, having a breakdown and just the emotions that run so heavily into these competitions, into their builds and stuff. And when things just aren't going right, it could be anxiety, it could be frustration, just a lot there. And you add the fact that, look, when you're going through these builds and stuff like that, I'm going to throw in my own touch here. I shake like crazy. I always joke that I have early onset Parkinson's, which it's nothing to joke about. But I shake like crazy. It doesn't matter what I do. And the more intense that I get with things, the more I shake. And building Lego and stuff like that, when you're not following an instruction and you're actually building something and you're under the gun of the clock and you've got to constantly be going and you're trying to get these and everything is not 100% thought out and some things are going to break apart and stuff, you start shaking even more in my case. And what that's going to do is that's going to increase your heart rate. That's going to increase your anxiety, your frustration, anything that, you as a human being, specifically to you as an individual, in this case, Michelle, it's going to ratchet it up that much more. And we've all been there. If you've never been there in some kind of situation like that, you're lying to yourself. Flat out, you're lying to yourself. So it just showed how much of the human factor was involved in this. And then you add the fact that Emily comes over and she's consoling her and basically, getting Michelle's head back into the game with that mom touch. You completely saw it. She is a fantastic mom. She walks straight over there, mom friend in this case, and was just like, it's like the pat on the back, like, it's all right, honey, let's go. and she got her head going, and they started boom, boom, boom. They started pumping this out. And I honestly think had they not had the setback, they probably would have really kicked a lot of butt in this. It would have been that much more grandiose. So let's talk about the top two here. The top two are Nick and Stacy. That's first shot for them up in the top two. And Ethan and Dom. First episode, and they're getting thrown up in the top. Hello. Oh, my goodness. So it comes down to who is the winner. If you've watched it, you already know. But drum roll, please. No, I'm just kidding. Nick and Stacy were the winners. I chose them as one of the top few builds. It was them, Ethan and Dom, and man, just some really, really unique builds. I thought Brendan and Greg might be in there as well, but it was Nick and Stacy that won this time. So congrats to them. Let's talk about the bottom two, Christine and Michelle, which I think everybody could have seen that coming. Unfortunately, you know, you could feel it when the judges were kind of like, if you would have had more time, if you would have it would have changed some things. And it's just, you know, it sucks. It really sucks. Nobody wants to go home. And, you know, it just happens sometimes. It just absolutely happens. So the other bottom team here, you had John and Xavier. And I think, so we've seen the teams that have gone home so far. Those teams to me were kind of shoo-ins. It was only a matter of time. John and Xavier, I think, are on borrowed time. I think their builds are okay, but I think they are definitely lacking in comparison to some of these other teams in here. Christine and Michelle had done really well to this point. It was just the wrong day, the wrong time to have that mistake, and that's all it takes. It could be something simple, and unfortunately, they just ran out of time, and you know it ended their run. So, just unfortunate. So, sorry to see, I should say, that Christine and Michelle went home. We'll have that interview promptly coming up on the backside of this show. We'll touch on the grandpappies here at the end of this. Anyway, I'm calling my shot for the top three teams that are going to finish. And, you know, I looked at this really, really, really in depth. I've gone back and forth with this for a while. Emily and Liam, I think, are definitely going to be there in probably the top two, without a doubt. I just said top three. I'm not listing them 1 through 3, but I definitely think they are going to be one of the top two teams when it comes down to the final episode, without a doubt. They have not showed any weakness. Their builds continue to impress. Okay, they weren't in the top 2, or they were definitely in the top 4 for this episode. Definitely. They weren't anywhere near close to relegation. Nowhere. Nick and Stacy just blew it out of the park this week. They've been doing well. Every single week they've been really doing well. And, you know, it was just a matter of time until they hit the top of the mountain. It was just on what it would be. And Nick is a great builder. I don't know anything about Stacy, but I know a lot about Nick, and I've known Nick for many, many years. And I know what he can do and how he can accomplish things. So it doesn't shock me. So they're in my top 3. And I'm going to call my shot with Ethan and Dom. I think they have a lot to bring. The only thing is, and I know what is coming for next week, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but I honestly think that they will be there. I don't think they'll win it. I think it's going to come down to Emily and Liam and Nick and Stacy. There's, you know, Steven and Steven have done really well. You know, the brothers have done really well. I just don't know that Ethan and Dom are going to be able to stand up at the end and beat them down. I think there's some maturity in there that definitely plays into this. Experience, if you want to call it that. Maybe not so much maturity, but definitely experience. So those are going to be my top 3 that I'm calling right now. I'm going to hold them. I'm going to hold them until the end here. Next week, they have the dog show, the first ever Lego Masters dog show. And of course, they let the puppies come running, and they have to recreate. I'm assuming they are either given a dog or by random, or they have to choose out of a hat or something like that. And, you know, it's completely random that way. I'm saying this right now. Nick is incredibly gifted at recreating real life things and objects. It would not shock me in the least if they were picked for the top 2 again. If they come anywhere near the bottom, I will be blown away. I will absolutely be blown away. I just don't. He's such a methodical builder that I can't see them failing at this. Stacy, they work together really well, at least it seems from the production. So it would not shock me to see them in the top 2 or even win it. Now, they did show a little snippet, of Ethan and Dom, and, they had the dramatic music and something had happened to their dog, You don't know. You don't know how that is shot and edited and clipped together and not. You just really have to wait and see. But it looks like most of them in the clips are going to have trouble with this. Think of this as like the wearables that they did. Was that last year? That is super tough. Some of this stuff that is really delicately built, and in this case, you're building more of like a shell because you're trying to match what the dog looks like. Instead of building super heavy, thick on the inside, you're trying to make this shell of this recreation of this animal. So it's going to be a fun episode to see what happens next. I don't have any shot. I'm not calling a shot. I'm not pointing to the fence like the Bambino. I have no idea who's going home next week. But if I had to, ballpark it, yeah, I could definitely put somebody there. Here's the last thing I'm going to say. I don't think next week is going to be the downfall of John and Xavier. I think they're close. But for some reason, I think with their anime love, I think they're going to do pretty darn well on this build. I just have this weird feeling. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I just have this weird feeling that the stuff that they like building like that, I think this just is going to fit their wheelhouse. This could be the one challenge. So we'll see. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Check out that interview coming right on the back side of this with Christine and Michelle. And we'll go from there. So until we meet again, I'm your minifig host, Matt. Let's build on it.